Hello, I'm John Stossel.
We libertarians are the only ones who can lead America out of this morass, but we can do so only by adhering to principle. The minute we accept any of their immoral programs for the sake of practicality, we lose the moral high ground.
So other candidates basically are all or nothing. And you know full well, when you go for all or nothing, almost always you get nothing. We are going to instead act like a football coach. Football coaches everywhere will tell you most of the teams that win the game get the most first downs. Move the ball down the field. That's what we will do.
COVID just happens. You're the president. People are panicking. People are dying. What would you do?
That's what I'm saying, John. You've got a defective system. You want to get government out of this system. You want to get the Centers for Disease Control abolished. You want to get the FDA abolished. You want to stop them from doing anything. You want the health care.
How would that help with COVID?
Because the dynamism of a free market produces healthcare tests, masks, ventilators. This is the dynamism of a free market. You wouldn't have these shortages. You have people that were willing to help other people, like in England, where they call for 250,000 volunteers for young people, 750,000 volunteered. What we need to do is recapture a faith in ourselves, a faith in freedom, a faith in free markets, rather than trying to figure out how to make this socialism work.
What the president should have done was had an Emergency Powers Act and said, okay, for the FDA, you only have to prove safety. You don't have to prove efficacy. We need to get these kids out there.
Question is, yes, we get information out. You use government as a clearinghouse to provide information, even advice, recommend that you wear a mask, that sort of thing. And then you allow the people, the customers, to decide where they're going to do business.
John, if there was a button right here that if I pushed it, it would abolish every single welfare state program immediately, I wouldn't hesitate. Why? Because I want to be free. And freedom necessarily means the end of the entire welfare state, coercive charity. There's no reason why people need to be forced to be good and caring. You don't need Social Security and Medicare. You can count on children to honor mother and father on a voluntary basis.
I need to see hard data, and I think American voters need to see hard data too. I don't think we can just give them glib answers of liberty and freedom. I think they need to actually see it to believe it.
Sorry, what is a crutch to a ladder? I don't understand.
Okay, well, that is a system in which it's Milton Friedman. He called it a negative income tax, and I would combine that with a graduated flat tax. But that would provide a basis below which people would not go, but they'd always have an incentive, John. That's the critical important. Always have an incentive to improve yourself, to earn the extra dollar.
I'm still free. I'm just getting help from my kindly government.
Well, really, if they're so free, how can a government decide to put them under house arrest and quarantines and take over their jobs and their businesses? You know, the case is that they're not free. People think they're free. They have an illusion of freedom, but that's what we have to attack.
If anything.
Let me answer that question, but let me defer it for a minute because I'm kind of troubled with your exchange with Dr. Jorgenson. You asked her, what is the role of government? What should it be doing? And she gave the answer short shrift and immediately moved to charity. Vermin Supreme asked her the same question in a previous debate, said, what is your ideal form of government? And she said, I refuse to answer that question. It's my understanding throughout this campaign.
Well, she said courts and police. And
but she supports more than that. She supports the welfare state through Social Security and Medicare. She's never called for the dismantling of the national security state, the massive military industrial complex, the CIA. So
which of the many accusations?
You want to keep Social Security and the welfare state?
My plan for Social Security is to have an immediate opt-out on day one. Now, of course, you need Congress to help, but if I had a magic wand, on the first day in office, nobody would ever put another dime into Social Security again. But here's the problem. We've got 12 million people who are dependent solely on Social Security. And I agree with you, will agree with your question. What about the people who don't have kids? So what I would do is, we all know that their Social Security was not put into the lockbox that we were promised. It was spent on government assets and other things with the government. So what I would do is I would sell those government assets, things like mineral rights, water rights, buildings downtown. And I would take that money and I would fund the people who are in the 50s, 60s, 70s, who were forced literally at the point of a gun to put their money into the inefficient Ponzi scheme put up by the government, and I would give them their money back that they put in. If we had good intelligence, we would find out about the virus ahead of time, about Wuhan. But the thing is the CIA is, with all the black ops and all the assassinations, and I don't think the CIA can be reformed. And I thought I was pretty clear when I said I want the intelligence function of the CIA to be rolled into the military.
And would there be spies? Would there be any CIA-like thing?
Absolutely no CIA at all. This is the most evil organization in U.S. history. MK Ultra, state-sponsored assassinations, hiring Nazis. Same with the NSA. You have a basic military force whose only mission is to defend the United States. You don't need a massive spy network to protect us from really a virtually non-existent possibility that some foreign nation state is going to cross the oceans and successfully invade the United States. No.
Judge Gray, climate change.
Yeah.
What would you do?
If you still remembered I was here, but I am still. Look, in the first place, we have to end this partisan gridlock that's around climate change. Basically the direct result of that, John, is that it results in countless millions of dollars being directed into the politicians' campaign funds. Get the government out of the way. The private sector, the individuals, put science to work. Let the people save our climate. We need international cooperation. We need to point the finger at, for example, China and India that are right now building still these coal-powered electronic plants.
I appreciate you finally getting back to me. I was getting kind of lonely over here with the questions.
You guys are complaining, but we're keeping track of the time, and neither of you got
what's the total?
Joe is behind, if anybody.
Really?
But
Okay.
Vermin, it's your turn. Immigration. What would your policy be? President Trump says, build the wall.
My policy is that of the Libertarian Party. In fact, my campaign is straight down the platform. If you look at the statistics, and again, I'm a scientist, I go by data. If you look at the statistics, people born on American soil actually commit more crimes than people born on foreign soil after they're in our country.
So how would you explain free trade to people? President Trump says, because of our trade deficit, we're losing $800 billion a year. Explain why he's wrong.
It is amazing to me that we still deal with these kind of economic myths some 200 and something years after the publication of Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations. I mean, look what he's done, President Trump, with his trade war against China that the Congress never specifically approved. It's dictatorial conduct in its purest form, raising taxes on the American people, tariffs, and for what?
Judge Gray, that same theme, keeping government out. It's my guess that 2/3 of libertarians are pro-choice, but 1/3 would say it is the role of government to prevent murder, and abortion is murder. What do you say?
John, of course, now you're touching on a really important and emotional issue. It's really, surprisingly enough, a question of definition. If you define a human life begins at conception, then abortion is murder. I don't. I'm not sure when. I'm not that smart, but certainly not in the middle of the second trimester. I don't believe that life has begun.
Firearms restrictions on their face are indeed inherently racist, and we're historically used to keep former slaves and people of color from exercising their constitutional rights.
Michigan's governor said, look, it worked what we did. We've got it under control. Exact quote, we needed to take a uniquely aggressive action to protect people. And look, our actions are working. How do you answer that?
Well, this is the inner dictator and the inner tyrant that comes out in all these Democrats and Republicans with their lockdowns and their arrests, and then they try to justify their tyranny with the results. I say liberty above all else. And so what we need to do is to go to our fellow Americans and say, hey, listen, this indoctrination that makes you think you're a free person, it's false.
You, Joe, would you legalize marijuana?
Legalize everything.
Legalize everything.
All drugs, every single one of them.
Heroin, crack cocaine.
Everything.
Judge Gray?
Lightning round.
Yes, indeed. As you know, I went on record in 1992, legalized these drugs.
Every single one. This frightens people. Vermin? Lighting
Yes,
up
the
a joint,
libertarian
certainly marijuana. What
Indeed.
cabinet departments would you keep?
Well, I do want military. I mean,
Defense?
yes,
State?
I do want defense.
All right, let me be specific. We have a lot of government departments: state, defense, treasury, EPA, HUD, the agriculture department, education. I'd like to ask you all, which would you keep, if any? Energy, transportation, health and human services, homeland security, interior, labor, veterans affairs.
Direct answer to your question, no, the Department of Education should be dismantled. The Department of, the EPA, we need information, so you prune it down a lot, but provide accurate information out there. Department of Commerce probably is not necessary. Department of Education, like I said. I would keep state, certainly defense, the Treasury, shrink, but that's what you do. Veterans Administration, we need that, but we'd turn that into an insurance company and allow the veterans to get their health care and care.
I would say the State Department, because I want to have people to be able to use diplomacy in talking to other countries, and a very minute Department of Defense. All the rest of the alphabet soup agencies, they're going to be defunded and eliminated, period.
Jacob, would you keep any cabinet departments?
I would. I'd keep 4: state, defense, treasury, and justice. And let me say something. Let me clarify something. Contrary to what Jo said, I didn't dodge anything. Dodging is what she did when you asked her about those cabinet positions. It's also dodging was at the South Carolina Libertarian Party convention, where she was asked whether sex work should be legalized. And she said, I refuse to answer that question. When you asked me about climate change, I started to answer the question.
Let's go back. Should sex work be legalized?
Of course not. Like some people have said, prostitution is basically capitalism and sex. Which of those two are you against? I'm for both.
Thank you all.